Give us your thoughts. Why should I care about the baseball playoffs?
Well, traditionally, having the first round bye has not been a huge advantage. When you look at some of the previous champions, a lot of them have come out of the wild card round. So I guess for me, I'm just waiting because you have the Phillies and you have the Dodgers who have the first round bye in the National League. You have the Yankees and you have the Indians. I'm sorry, the Guardians who have,
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
yes.
You can't say that word on this podcast.
The
What is
Guardians, the
wrong with
Cleveland
you?
Guardians, who have a bye in the first round in the American League. I personally think it's going to be Philly or LA or New York coming out of the American League. Those teams have kind of been the best from start to finish. There isn't really any reason to think that that won't continue in logical terms, but baseball is very unpredictable. I would say, much like hockey or the NFL, it's a lot about getting hot at the right time. In the NFL, if you have a hot quarterback, you can make a run. In the NHL, you get the hot goalie, you can make a run. In baseball, if you get a pitcher that just is shutting everybody down, you have a really good chance to go to the World Series. I like the playoff format, the best of three, then the best of five, then the best of seven, and then the World Series. Personally, it makes the regular season more exciting. Less so in this one, though. I think a lot of the playoff teams, except in the National League for the Diamondbacks being left out, and the Mets Braves having that doubleheader that put them both in the playoffs on Monday. We pretty much knew who the teams were going to be, but that's kind of my mini playoff review. I really like the Dodgers and I really like the Yankees. I mean, how could you not, though, with their roster constructions and their pitching? That doesn't mean that's who it's going to be, but that's who I like.
Yeah, look, I'm not anywhere close to the baseball fan you are, although in my youth it was my favorite sport, and I probably will tune in here or there. But I totally disagree with you on the format. I hate the format, and I think the proof is in the pudding the last few years. You had the Phillies 2022 wild card team. You had last year the Diamondbacks and the Rangers, both wild card teams.
That's what I
And
was
look,
saying.
I'm not saying a wild card team shouldn't. I'm not saying it's automatically bad if a wild card team makes the World Series. What I'm saying is there's not enough correlation between the regular season success and the postseason success. Now, some of that is for the reasons you pointed out. Baseball's a sport where short series,
Yeah.
oftentimes the inferior team can win, right? There's
NHL.
nothing you can do about that. There's something to the hot pitcher thing. So some of that unpredictability is good and fine. But I think what has happened is they've erred too far on the side of unpredictability. And the reason is because the reason these wild card teams, I think, are having so much success isn't just the unpredictability. I think it's because of the rustiness of the teams that get the bye. And I think that is a major flaw of this playoff format. That in baseball, the rhythm is so important.
Yeah.
And I think teams have talked about that. They're trying to come up with all kinds of things. Last year, I forget who it was. I think it was the Braves. They tried to do simulated games while they had the break. I think it was a thing they did to give advantage to the teams with the two best records in each league. Give them a bye. The problem is it's actually potentially a disadvantage. I would like to see them go back to a format that was closer to the older format where the wild card teams had to play a one-game elimination. Like make there be a big difference between winning a division and a wild card. So if you're the wild card, you're playing one game. And if you lose, you're done. And then if you win, you got to go play the top team in the league. And the top team in the league's not sitting there for 5, 6, 7 days. They're sitting there for 2 days. So they're fresh too. I think that would be a better system. I understand why baseball doesn't do that. More teams, more games, more money. I get it. But if you want it's a problem consistently when the best teams, and in many cases with the best players, not always, sometimes
Yeah.
the best teams don't have the best players, but you mentioned like the Dodgers with Shohei Ohtani, they got one of the buys, right? He is the most exciting player in baseball, the best player in baseball. They're one of the best teams, clearly. If they lose in that first round
You could.
to a wild card team, in part because they had the bye, which was supposed to be an advantage, but made them rusty, and then they lose to a team that comes in hot. And now Shohei Ohtani and the Dodgers are out in the first round, and that continues to happen year after year. I just think that's bad for baseball. I think it's better in general to have your best teams and your biggest stars advance in the postseason. I think this format makes that less likely than it should be.
To your point, I like the 1-game series in the first round and then 7-game series moving forward.
I do too.
Because it lessens the randomness of it. I think if you put the Oakland A's in the playoffs and you shook this thing up in a simulation, they would win a World Series out of 100 times. And right. I mean, that's part of the problem, right? Is because, like I said, it's baseball. Like, there's a lot of randomness in baseball. That makes it very difficult.
What about the White Sox? Do you think they could win a World Series in a simulation?
Oh my God, that's such a great question. The losingest team in the history of baseball. It seems unlikely, but I wouldn't rule it out. How about that?
41 and 121.
That if you look at baseball this year, not a single team won 100 games.
Yeah.
The White Sox lost 121, but no one else lost more than 100.
Which is strange because in recent years that has not been the case.
Right,
because
people are going for draft picks.
Yeah, right. You've had tankers and you've had 300 or 400 win teams. In fact, the Dodgers had the best record in baseball, 98 and 64. Oh, speaking of the Dodgers in baseball, I didn't have a chance to read this, but Nate Silver, who I love, did his newsletter today. And one of the questions someone asked him, what he answered, I haven't read his response, is Shohei Ohtani the best baseball player of all time? Now, I kind of hate these arguments in a way because it's so weird to compare Babe Ruth and Shohei Ohtani with everything that's different now with nutrition and sports science. And I mean, it's just, but it is a fun debate. And I just think, I will say this, I can't imagine there has been a better baseball player than Shohei Ohtani when you consider the value that he provides. I mean, he had one of the best offensive seasons we've seen this year. He's going to win, what is this, his third or fourth MVP he'll win? I've lost count. And he didn't even get to pitch, which, by the way, he's one of the best pitchers in the league. I mean, to have a guy who at the same time is one of the elite hitters and elite pitchers in baseball, to do that year after year after year, I mean, I think you certainly can make the argument he's the best player ever.
He's not a better hitter than Barry Bonds.
Well, that's
he's
true.
not.
No,
statistically,
he's a
not
hell of
even
a lot
close.
better pitcher, though.
Well, obviously. I mean, that's the unique thing, right? I think look, forgive me for having some perspective, but I like to wait until a person's career over before I start really making that conversation valid. Ohtani could get hurt next year, and the Los Angeles Dodgers would still owe him $1 bazillion and he'd be fine. But would he be better than Babe Ruth? I don't want to nerd out on this too much because no one cares, but look back at how Babe Ruth was better than the entire league. He hit more home runs than teams. Like, we need to just calm
some
down.
Years. You're right.
Is Ohtani hitting more home runs than teams? He's not. That's the remarkable part about Babe Ruth. It wasn't just his singular production. It was his singular production relative to everyone else who played baseball.
Yeah.
And yes, they were plumbers and firemen. And, the Yankees had a short porch and Forbes Field was 490 feet to center field. And there's a lot of things that we could talk about that make it different. But I'm just talking about his production relative to everyone else who played the game. The gap between him and everybody else is not the same. Ohtani, I mean, Aaron Judge is great. I mean, he had an amazing season.
I would say you're mostly right, but I think if you go back and look at Lou Gehrig, his teammate stats, they were pretty comparable in a lot of years. Like Ruth hit more home runs, but their overall stat lines were pretty comparable. But you're right. Babe Ruth was a dominant player, way better than.
I mean, in the Mount Rushmore of sports, Babe Ruth is on it, and Shohei Ohtani is not. So how about that?
That's true. Let's say this. Babe Ruth was better than the average player of his day by a margin that is hard to even calculate.
That's right.
His
WAR would be 50,000.
Right.